Day of the 6th National Media Conclave. Now we'll start the plenary session, third plenary session as per our schedule. So I would like to request Professor Biplab Loha Chaudhary, the session chairperson, and speakers Professor Gopalan Rabindran, Professor Bindu Sharma, and Professor Mihir Ranjan Patra to come to the dais. And as you all know, Madam Devabani Mukherjee will moderate this session. Madam Devabani Mukherjee is the organizing committee of this national, one of the organizing committee member of this National Media Conclave. We are very happy. She is with us always, say it is in virtual mode or in physical mode. She always extends her all possible support to make the conclave successful. We are very happy. And now Madam will coordinate the whole thing as the moderator. So now I request all of our guests to light the lamp and to pay tribute to Dr. Mahotsav. As yesterday you all know, Dr. Hare-Krishna Mahotsav, the eminent leader in the Indian freedom movement. He was Chief Minister for 2 terms, before independence as the Premier of the state and just after independence as the first Chief Minister of the state also. And he was former Governor, erstwhile Bombay State. He was also Union Minister, a eminent historian, the founder of Prajatantra, very popular Delhi. So many things. The city, the capital city Bhubaneswar, it was his dream. And during his chief ministership, first chief ministership, he shifted the capital from Cuttack to Bhubaneswar. So we used to call Dr. Mahotsav as the architect of modern Odisha. And in his memory, this year it is his 123rd birth anniversary in every year. And he was the pioneer of Odia journalism. So to remember him, every year from our university we used to organize this National Media Conclave to dedicate to his memory. So now I request all of our panel guests and the session chair to put the light and to pay tribute to Dr. Mahotsav, and after that the session will continue as per the schedule. So now over to Devabani Madam.
Thank you, Dr. Padi. We'll just wait for a minute before the lighting of the lamp is done. I would request the audience to please give a loud round of applause when the lighting is conducted. Thank you, audience. Thank you so much. Our esteemed panelists, the speakers, they are lighting the lamp one by one. Audience, loud round of applause, please. Students behind. Thank you. We offer flowers to Dr. Mahotsav. This is one of the brilliant time of the day when we pay our tribute to Dr. Mahotsav. Thank you so much, esteemed panelists and speakers. A little announcement by Dr. Padi before I take over the microphone.
Friends, one more announcement. Yesterday, we got a mail. I saw the mail around 10:50 p.m. We got a mail from the member secretary, ICSSR, that the proposal, our proposal with the ICSSR, they have considered, and the ICSSR is agreed to be one of the collaborative partners for this 6th National Media Conclave. So this is an official announcement from the organizers of the 6th National Media Conclave. Thank you. Debomani Madam, continue.
So before we open up the session, I will just take a minute or two from the audience and from my esteemed speakers who are on the dais already. I'm wishing you a very good morning, everyone, and welcoming our esteemed guests, speakers, and delegates in the 6th National Media Conclave happening in the temple city of Bhubaneswar. Today is the second day of this conclave, and after a gap of 2 years, owing to the mayhem pandemic COVID-19, the Eastern India's Mahakumbh, the National Media Conclave, is back in the physical mode. The 6th National Media Conclave marks the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, celebrated across the country to commemorate 75 years of independence. The conference's broad theme is Media and Culture, and organized by Institute of Media Studies under Utkal University in association with Consortium for Educational Communication, CEC. Culture is learned, not inherited, and transmitted from generation to generation. It is an integrating mechanism, the social or normative glue that holds together a potentially diverse group of organizational members. The source of new culture elements in a society may also be in another society. The cultural elements of one culture borrowed and incorporated in recipient culture is called the diffusion. Media plays a cardinal role in disseminating our daily life, cultural practices. It is said to reflect our cultural norms and values, and it has widened our choices and increased cultural expression with the flow of information at planetary level. Post the 2 plenary sessions held on the first day of the conference, where we had illustrious dais of speakers who took the responsibility to enrich us on the theme of social media, cultural pluralism, Indian society and media, today's plenary session 3 will follow, further enlightening us on media margin, right-based inclusive society. And to unfold the theme, I would now request our esteemed speakers who are already on the dais to gear up for the session. I request our chairperson, Dr. Biplab Loho Chaudhary, to open the session, and let's all be there listening with rapt attention. Dr. Loho Chaudhary, please take up the session.
Namaskar, Suprabhat. We are in a very interesting session. So far I understand, because media's understanding has 4 levels, as Anandavardhan said in his book around 8th and 9th century AD. As I understand, it is an appropriate theme for the plenary speakers who, through their experience, has really reached a stage when they would be doing great justice to it, and we will find experience-based, some sort of ground level theorizing today. I'm sure, because we have Dr. Gopalan Ravindran, the esteemed professor here, Professor Bindu Sharma here and Dr. Mihir Ranjan Patra here. So I am cocksure about it. Now the theme is media margin, right-based inclusive society. See, media had been thrusting, especially the mass media, the people or the mass as the simple receptors, receiving people. We talked yesterday about center-periphery relationship, in which periphery has a very little role in the same media, in the same medium. Now, so we can say with reference to media that at the first level of meaning generation, we can say, yes, media creates margin with its audience when it is mass media. But with self-mass communication, the social media, this margin is getting obliterated. Now, when the margin gets obliterated, the right-based inclusive society, there is a chance it will happen. So, mass self-communication is, in a way, the weapon of inclusion of all as per their desire and wish. But this is basically a two-way sword. It can be utilized for better things by the knowledgeable and people with balance and who have the good of the people and the country and the world in their mind. At the same time, it can also, for the worst scenario, with reference to any aspect of human life, individual to the globe. So, any of these can be done. Now the point is right-based inclusive society. There would be definitely discussion on what is better, right or duty. Right or duty. The dominant paradigm or example is that of right-based, because this is how we have been made to think. To a great extent it is correct. But on the other hand, if right, we can state, like my own state West Bengal, I have no problem to tell that, or many other states, then it's very difficult. And the media also, if it does in that line, then it's really a great debacle for the humanity. India and the humanity. So with this short intro of the first level, and there is a second level of meaning also. The question of what is media margin. We have to make a detour of the definition of the media from a mechanical instrument which has been utilized by us, but when we are utilizing, how we are utilized by it, so that out of our 24 hours, maybe 15 hours, 16 hours, we are into it. We are forgetting many things. If we look it from the social perspective, as with the mass self-communication, when it makes the circle full, that is the community communication spectrum, starting from the interpersonal media, human media, through the folk communication, classical communication, in Indian perspective. In Western perspective, classical or traditional media is mass media. So I am talking in Indian perspective. From there, if we look into the question, what is media margin? Definitely, those who created the themes, they had a thought in their mind, but it is more of a sort of igniting thoughts, which is the purpose of the 6th National Level Media Convention, organized very successfully by Utkal University, Center for Media Studies. So at the second level, from technological definition of media in our mind, of which we are hostage, and with that there is a property concept. My property means you are away from that property, but my right it is. Where is the balance? So from there, do we need to shift to the social definition of media? If we do that, at the same time we can include all the human media which are nothing but part of social networking, bond making, which we call social capital. And how we can make an interface between the two and have a seamless transition from one to another and a circular communication. So with self-mass communication, we have that possibility from individual through group communication of social nature in human media to technology, again coming back, sort of a looping. But there is a danger. When we talk about media margin, the artificial intelligence to its fullest strength and a machine communication, and we all have to be in machine learning, what sort of a communication situation it will bring for us, that was much earlier being conceived in the novel called Neuromancer and in Cyborg. So we have to consider all these things when we talk about media margin, right-based, inclusive society. And I am sure within 15 minutes, Professor Ravindran and another 15 minutes each for Mihir and Professor Misra, all of them will do justice to it. And we'll ask for questions. There is a test. Question must be of one-liner. No explanation, nothing. Because our panel of these three, they are qualified to understand your context, everything, in one line, and that's a test. That's a test. That's a test of today's session. One line question, simple question, nothing more. Be prepared for it, and they will ask your question. Thank you. Now I request Dr. Gopalan Ravindran, currently the Professor and Head, Department of Media and Communication, Central University of Tamil Nadu, to take the stage.
Good morning, friends, colleagues, esteemed chair, Professor Biplab, the man behind the show, Professor Padi, the well-wishers, dear students. I'm also wondering why the organizers picked this rather incomplete theme. And incompleteness can be likened to inadequacies, and inadequacies in a philosophical sense can also be read as something very substantive, or rather very adequate. From a philosophical point of view, right-based inclusive society is an impossibility. Moment you bring in something like rights in a society which is not even transitional in many senses, as in the Indian case, where you have contestations of feudalism, modernity within quote, postmodernity within quote, etc.
These politically correct terms, in my opinion, are antithetical to. Okay, so if you look at the terms we have come to use in academia, such as Center for Inclusiveness, Center for this, that, etc. So all these are continuing the march of the colonial sites, which got us the disciplines where we work. Understand? So Utkal University or X University or Y University are patterned after the colonial sites. The first three universities in India were cultural imports into our country, and cultural imports succeed sometimes, fail many a time. In higher education, cultural import has not succeeded, in my opinion, because the agenda was conceived by somebody else with some different purposes and objectives, and we continue to work with the same agenda. Just as we have imported these disciplines, lock, stock and barrel from University of London, after which our first three universities were model, and after which all our universities have been model. Of course, in the last 30 years, the inspirations come from North America. That's the only difference. Before 80s, the inspiration came from UK. After 90s, the collapse of Cold War, the inspiration comes from North America. So in this context, how to engage with this theme, media margins, right-based inclusive society. Several thoughts were crossing my mind, and we can't give up the pursuit nonetheless, because as I mentioned earlier, inadequacies are to be seen as challenges to better our understanding. So any theme that gets circulated in conferences like this are not of our own making. So they have been already conceived to proceed in a particular line by those who want to control our minds, who want to control our academic pursuits, etc. For instance, if you look at thesis or working papers or term papers, in all the disciplines, in social sciences, I mean, you find a term empowerment. If you pursue the journey of this term empowerment during the last 30-40 years, you would end up in one of the policy documents of World Bank or some think tank somewhere. So our notion of empowerment, our idea of empowerment, though is rooted in our problems, social problems, problems of women, etc., etc. We are using the lens or prism of somebody who works as part of a geopolitical apparatus, that is a multilateral forum. And this multilateral forum wants us to think our reality in a particular way. Last 10 years, 15 years, policymakers, particularly urban planners, are seized with this notion of smart city, making our city smart. I was curious who conceived this logic of smart city. Again, you end up in a document of a international think tank, or you find it in the website of World Bank or IMF. From our side, we can't help this. So we are pretty powerless as academics working in universities to change the order of geopolitical nature of communication. communication since the first day has been the child of geopolitics. Believe it or not, we are talking on this theme thanks to whatever happened as a part of geopolitical initiatives during and after Second World War. And nothing has changed. Nothing has changed in this fundamental nature of the drive. Freud only gets us two drives, death drive and pleasure drive. Okay, so from the side of communication, we should think about this geopolitical drive that sustains what we are talking, what we are thinking, how we are talking, how we are thinking. So we are helpless in a sense in only talking about what is to be talked about, what is to be written about. So that's why you find that majority of the conference papers across the world are on social media. They are not on communication and culture. Because it profits the geopolitical machinery, which also owns the apparatus that has got us social media. So we don't talk about political economy of social media, just as we talked about political economy of television, political economy of newspapers. Not that we are incapable of talking about social media's political economy, but it doesn't make any sense. It is stating the obvious that these three groups own these media, or these two guys own these media. So this is their annual net worth, etc. So talking about media or media margins should compel us to critique what is meant by media. Are we missing something when we relate to media? So again, we have to rethink what McLuhan wanted us to rethink, but unfortunately we forgot what he said in the margins. To put it in a loaded term, what McLuhan said in the margins has been forgotten. So what he said in the margins of his lectures, of his writings, are the most substantive contribution of McLuhan. What he has said in the main is the least substantive and least important one. So these are mere catchy phrases, slogans, which we have come to read McLuhan. So we have taken literally a slogan such as medium is the message, art and cool media, this and that. In the process, we have done great injustice to one of the great scholars of media and communication, that is McLuhan. If you read Understanding Media, it needs margins. Okay, you would understand that it is not media that we have in mind, media such as television, radio, or this or that, social media, but something else. And I'm not here to explain you what he was talking about. I am only drawing your attention to what are not media and what is not communication. And McLuhan was not the first to talk about this. Ancient Jain philosophers in India made some substantive contributions to our understanding of communication. And one such thread informs me that communication in itself is flawed if it is going to be rooted in language structures. Any language-based communication is likely to be a failure, as language is an inadequate medium of communication. This you learn from one thread of ancient Jaina philosophy in India. And media are wedded to linguistic structures. The power of Indian films is not because it uses the language of films. It's because of the fact that it uses the language of a oral culture or society. That's why in Indian films you have characters talking all the time. That's why in Indian television you have characters talking all the time. That's why in Indian news stories in print or online you have people talking all the time. Talking comes to us naturally as members of oral society. It's not a problem, but it becomes a problem when we work with media which have been given to us from outside. Media or cultural imports continue to be sites of cultural imports. That's why even after nearly 400 plus years of our existence with print, we are unable to overcome completely the power of the orality. So it continues to be a site of contestation where orality and print are struggling to exist. In such a context where we have sites of contestations in the spheres of media, communication and culture. Less said about culture the better, because culture, according to Remo Williams in his monumental work Keywords, he opens this entry on culture like this: culture is one of the 2 or 3 most problematic words in English. Again, our notions of culture have been given to us during the colonial period. And coloniality is not about discontinuities alone, but it is about discontinuities in knowledge seeking, and discontinuities in the way we have engaged with culture or read culture differently prior to colonialism or prior to the colonial period. So culture here becomes a mainstreaming logic now. So when we speak of media cultures, we speak of television cultures, social media cultures, we try to convey the impression that culture is something reachable, accessible, or something that is within our grasp. In this mainstreaming logic, we are interpellated in imaginary relationships with these cultures, in imaginary relationships with film cultures, digital cultures, and all mediated cultures. Now, are we chasing the ideals? That's my question in this theme. Are we chasing the ideal inclusive society? And chasing ideals again would trap us in imaginary relationships. So there are so many ifs and buts. However, we need to remember that understanding media or media margins is though problematic, would be a eventful journey for any student of communication, if only we understand in a broad canvas where these key terms which we have come to use are to be read as problematic, not because we know little about them, but because they have their own geopolitical colonial origins, firstly. So, if we are teaching mass communication, we need to understand that this term is geopolitical and colonial in its origin. Secondly, if we are using culture as a prefix or suffix, then we need to understand that even in the Western Hemisphere, this term started its journey only around 18th, 19th century. I'm not saying this, Remo Williams says this in his keyword. Thirdly, more importantly, if we read somebody's work as a site of framework, say if I'm a fan of McLuhan, yeah fine, you can read McLuhan, you can read any X or Y, but you need to understand none of them were original. None of us are original in our thoughts. Our thoughts are always influenced by our ancestors. McLuhan was inspired by Walter Owing, who gave us this framework of orality. He was a contemporary of Owing. McLuhan was inspired by heraldiness. So to understand McLuhan, first you have to stop reading McLuhan and read Walter Owing. You have to read heraldiness and then come back to McLuhan. After McLuhan, many have critiqued McLuhan. One important person is Frederick Hitler. So to understand McLuhan, retrospectively you have to read Hitler. To understand Hitler, you have to read Manowik. To put all of them into dock, you have to read your native philosophy. You have to come back to a Jaina philosophy or Saiva philosophy or a Buddhist philosophy and then put them all together in a basket and weigh them differently. At the moment, we are taking a very singular, mainstreaming, hegemonic approach when we teach students about all this, and we are unfortunately living in the times where media studies are plainly mistaken as studying the media. Studying the media is not media studies. Studying communication is not communication studies. Of communication, critical studies of media are the need of the hour, and thank you for being patient. Thank you very much. Wish you all the best.
We'll take questions only after let us complete. After that we'll take questions. You can frame in one sentence the questions. And we'll take few comments from our seniors here, because they have guided us. So we'll take that. Now, Professor Mishra first, or yes, Professor Mishra.
Professor Biplab Lohochandri on the dais, esteemed panelists and senior media educators, faculty members, and my dear students. As we all know, the concept of inclusive society, that is society for all, is based on fundamental human rights. All human beings are born free, and hence they should enjoy equality in dignity and rights. As we know, this was established, the concept of inclusive society that was established in World Summit for Social Development, which was held in 1995, where where it was labeled as a society for all, where every individual with equal right and responsibility has active role to play. So we can say inclusive society is very much based on principles of diversity and fundamental equality for all individuals. And our own Indian constitution, our own Indian philosophy, that stresses this inclusiveness, this inclusion, and the very basic mantra that we know, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, that we pray for universal welfare, universal peace, and beautifully depicting the whole idea of well-being of all. Constitutionally, we agree upon equality, as we have, right to equality enshrined in our constitution, and where it is enforced by law also, because we have, six fundamental rights, and we can claim our rights using law. But rooted in the principles of social justice, all individuals, regardless of age, gender, religion, race, socio-economic status, they should have full participation in the society. So constitutionally, no doubt, we agree upon inclusion, social integration, but implementation becomes challenging. This integration brings the formation of a society where everybody has his or her place, his or her own niche. No, I don't mean it as an undifferentiated mass, but society with different elements, different members, still there is the acceptability. We accept diverse views, and everybody has a say. Well, Indian philosophy that goes well beyond that, when embracing the concept of Vasudev Kutumbakam, the whole world is a family. So valued that it is engraved in the entry of India's Parliament building. All of the word, Vasudev Kutumbakam, eternal reality, and we are a one family. So all the word, not only the word, the universe is one. So this is the beautiful philosophy we live by. If we believe that there would be no exclusion, no equality, no divides. Exclusion comes from stereotypes, prejudices, and stigmas that are socially constructed and have long-term influences on our behavior towards others. For creating inclusive society, we have to take into account both the social and the economic factors. Socially, the creation of a just, equitable world, which gives stability, trust, cooperation, social cohesion, and economically the equal opportunities for all, for shared prosperity. The concept of Vasudeva Kutumbakam is great strength of India, making it distinct from others. Why we need to adopt a framework given by some worldwide acclaimed agency? How to have an inclusive society? The very basic lesson is ingrained in our own philosophy. It does not begin with what to do with society. It simply states, think about a family of your own, where everyone accepts other with all the similarities and differences, with diversity of individuals, and yet the family flourishes as a unit. My point is why we are putting so much responsibility on media. Knowing the very basic character of media, as we all talk about on different platforms, that it is market driven, it is market oriented, governed by some forces, media hegemony we are talking, itself lacking, and media which is itself lacking diversity and plurality, which are fundamental qualities of inclusive society. So what is required for an inclusive society? As we all know, fundamental human rights, freedom, rule of law, participation in civic, social, economic and political activities, participation in decision-making processes, whereby, and when we have a look at media itself, maybe the organizational structure or the functionality of media, we found a number of biases, gender biases, regional biases, and we are expecting, this kind of media to play its role in creating an inclusive society. So mainstream media, as we all know, it lacks diversity and plurality. But the core of this inclusive society is full participation in all aspects of life. So we talk about women, children, youth, older, persons with disabilities, migrants, ethnic and religious minorities. And have you seen the representation of all these segments in the media? So when we talk about representation of all these segments in media, we find the situation is very dismal. The media, no doubt, is an important pillar of democracy. It shapes the society, not just it is taken as a technology, as our previous speaker was pointing out, but media is regarded as a big opinion maker, opinion shaper. Besides disseminating information, it has become the voice of people, including marginalized segments also. It is a platform to exchange diverse views. And we also talk about watchdog function of media. It can contribute to social integration, but there are many challenges, like challenge of digital divide. So access to internet is increasing worldwide, but still there is a gap between those who have the access to technologies and those who don't have. A big gap of rural, urban, rich, poor, educated, uneducated, young, old, men, women. So a lot of biases we can see. Then shrinking space for public issues. Like so many researchers, they are working on the analysis of media content. Like we come across, many researchers. Someone is studying the coverage of developmental issues in media or environmental issues in media, health-based issues in media. And I think for the past decade, the same results we are getting, that the coverage of these issues is almost less than 2%, right? So why the space for public issues is shrinking? I was talking to an editor and he said that media is a package. We have to take into account so many things. So what matters if this particular issue is given that much space? So this is the work for academic researchers. So the TV debates, social media monitoring cells, they ensure a particular kind of narrative is built where space for public issues is restricted. Then we are seeing the smart use of AI. Like social media, they are designed to present information that we are most probably like to click on. There are two factors combined. One are natural tendency to consume information, and second is reinforcing our pre-existing biases. So we are groping in same kind of information sphere. Then we have business models also, pressure on journalists to deliver media content. So we don't find diversity in content. There is homogeneity to a great extent. Then we have the issues of misinformation and disinformation, because this gatekeeping is casualty in social media. Access to free and unchecked flow of information is not there, and we don't know why we are being targeted. So control is difficult, and we also mostly the advice is for self-regulation and the code to follow the codes, whatever codes are available. Media can build informed public opinion. It can provide space for open debates, inclusion, social integration, pluralism, through professionalism. So, when we talk about inclusive society, participatory democracy and participatory media can be the solution, but where is this kind of media actually exist? So where can we find this kind of media? It's hard to answer. So the baseline is that the critical thinking, we cannot put thirst on media for creating inclusive society. So we can have learners, citizens. The stress on to inculcate critical thinking among the students, among the citizens, and we are talking about the critical thinking skills in NEP 2020 also. So it's important, how can we train young minds to be critical thinkers? Why things why things or actions are as they are, what is missing in the masses, and how to raise questions on the basis of their own experience. So, like our Indian tradition that stresses on Samek Chintan, that is to see things as they are, to have healthy doubt, to raise meaningful questions. And Buddha has also appealed in to his listeners not to accept discourses passively, but analyze it critically with their own real-world experience. So, my take on this theme is that instead of looking for an established system, how to create an inclusive society, we can explore the roots of our own Indian tradition and philosophy, and I think that will give an answer to the questions we are looking for. Thank you so much.
With us Dr. Mihir Ranjan Patro, Associate Professor, Department of CMT, Guru Jambheshwar University of Science and Technology, Hisar. Please, sir.
Sorry, I've got a very bad throat.
Respected, please give a loud round of applause to Dr. Patro, and we expect loud round of applause once a speaker ends his or her session. Please be a little living. Thank you so much.
Why so? I don't know what will happen once I finish my speech. Respected Chair, Professor Biplav, one of the youngest and ever smiling old-timers of media education, Professor Ravindran, Professor Bindu Sharma, and Dr. Devjani, and all dear listeners, including the grey-haired ones and the young ones. Professor Biplav started talking about the term inclusive society as an right-based inclusive society as an impossibility. Yeah, it might seem so, because we have been so socialized over such a long period of time, so many millennia, that we have taken many things for granted, and particularly marginalization and exclusion, and disrespecting the rights of the people. We've taken that for granted, and we turn a blind eye to all these problems. That's one of the problems, socialization. If you ask me right in the beginning, because I've been asked to be brief, there's little time, so my take right in the beginning, in my conclusion, all I need to say is that we need to re-socialize ourselves. Yesterday, we're talking, and anytime we talk about issues like inclusion, we talk about issues like representation of the minorities. We say that we need to be there in those places, in the places of policy making, and particularly in the media, so that we can raise a voice, we can raise the voices. But no, we don't need all the people, and maybe we cannot accommodate all people from all classes, all sections in the media at least, or in policy making. What we need are sensitive people, people with empathy, will understand the grassroots, will understand the margins and the marginalized. Only then we can have a better society, a better inclusive society. Talking about rights, it's difficult, it sounds difficult because the people whom we're talking about they don't even know about their rights. Forget about being able to exercise their rights. They don't know their rights. There are thousands and thousands of programs and plans being run by the central government and hundreds of them by each state government, the so-called beneficiary developmental programs, and people in the hinterlands, in the interior, they haven't even heard about those things. How will they take benefit of those things? In our country, the planning has always been very good. Has always been with the best of brains to do the planning. The problem comes with implementation. And that's because we hardly have any participation from the grassroots. The grassroots is not there when it is being planned. It's not involved in the implementation part, and because most of them don't know about it. That's one problem. Then I'll talking about media margins. I'll just babble a bit. I'll just meander around simply because I've been asked to. It's not going to be a very structured presentation. Talking about media, particularly communication, we communicate for almost all the time, 24 hours a day, with ourselves. Intrapersonal communication. Interpersonal communication would be about 16 odd hours. Talking about people like me who don't sleep, who maybe I sleep for about 2-3 hours, and the younger generation also is like me only. So we may be about 16, 18, 20 hours. Group communication again depends on the situation. Mass communication, God knows, but the so-called social media, we have become consumers, prosumers, we produce, we consume. Are we really consumers of the social media? No. Think about it. We are consumed by it. Think about it. What it does to us. 20 years, well, let's go back in 20 years. Say those who are in the, not even 20 and all, in the early 20s, maybe they won't understand. But those of us who've seen a little bit of time, let's go back in time. How we're spending our time. We're spending our time with our family, with our friends. We're socializing. The so-called social media are not so very social. We need to re-socialize ourselves. So to get out of this, only then we can become little sensitive, and maybe we'll develop little bit of empathy, and then maybe slowly we will have. I have a dream. Let's all of us have a dream. It's going to be a very difficult dream. Very difficult dream. I don't want to sound like a politician, but let's have a dream, and an individual dream. We can, at our level, do a lot. Let's dream of an inclusive India by the time we turn 100, by 2047. Let's all say that, yes, I have a dream. I want an inclusive India. We can achieve it. All we need to do is to be a little more sensitive. In our small spheres, we can do it. Because we know, even see, all major organizations, including all the governments, have been thinking about it, have been planning about it. The SDGs are fantastic. If we have gone through the social development, those sustainable development goals, goal number 10 says inclusive society. That's what we're talking about. It's goal number 10, sustainable development goal number 10 is initiated by the United Nations, and every country is a signatory to that. They are trying to do that. They're doing it. They're talking about sustainable development. God knows where it has gone. What the industries, what the big shots, like what Mr. Achyut Samant here has been doing, is that they are doing sustainable investments. KISS is a wonderful example of sustainable investments, doing wonderful work. Maybe some industrialists and others, through their CSR funds and all, can come up with sustainable investments. Not one-time investment to get the glory and all. Yes, we are doing this. No, sustainable. What we can do is that we can go for sustainable engagements. First with ourselves. Think about it. Talk to us. Let's talk to ourselves. Are we sensitive? Are we empathetic? Are we doing our bit? Are we inclusive? We're talking about an inclusive society. As an individual, am I inclusive? Am I accepting everybody? Okay, with that, see, I've already talked about society. We're socializing, we're thinking a little bit about the society at least, but now we have become, with the social media, this should be self-media. This should be called self-media. There's only self-aggrandizement about that. There's nothing else. We are talking about our personal glories. We did this. Yes, I'm going to take a bath now. Why should one post about that? That's self-centeredness at its worst. So we have to go back to the societal mode now. Okay, and talking about oh no, it's not an impossibility. I've talked about that. Okay, another thing, what media can do. What media has been doing, I'll just talk a little about that. We have these three, with this fantastic connotation, as I call it, info, edutainment, information, what we get in the name of information from the media. From the so-called established mass media to the social media, in the name of information, mostly what we get are propaganda and personal glory. That's all. We don't get real information. We hardly get any real information. In the name of entertainment, what we get, as they've said that television, they said it's for the 12-year-old mentality, and they don't want to think. Television doesn't want us to think. All content on television, it's just made, that you get immersed in that and don't think. Because if you start thinking, then you'll start questioning. Nobody wants us to question. We'll start questioning about the advertisements, about the relevance of those products and those advertisements, and about a whole lot of other things. About a whole lot of other things. No one wants us to question. So if we stay away from those things, stay away from those media, so-called mass media, they're not going to do anything for us. See, I'll tell you, in our country, how did media start? It started with Hickey's Gazette. Its official name was Bengal Gazette. Do you know it had a second official name? Right after that name, it was written the Calcutta General Advertiser. You can find them in many museums in Calcutta. Around 11 to 12 issues are available. In all the issues, almost all the issues had advertisements right on the very first page, front page. Had many advertisements. It was an advertising paper. Newspaper in our country began as an advertising paper with an official name, the Calcutta General Advertisers. Why are we expecting anything from them? It's a business. And as they say, the business of business is to do business, to make profits. It's like other businessmen, they don't have any concerns. So let's not expect much, but we can do, we as individuals, we can do a lot. We can do a lot. With that, I rest my case. I hope, sir, I haven't taken you. I didn't want to give you this thing of giving me a seat. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them. Thank you.
An answer session, and then few comments we would expect from our seniors. Before that, I just sum up their treatment of the Dr. Mihir Ranjan Patro was documenting and reflecting on social media. Then Binduji was normative reflective. Professor Ravindra was actually trying to give us some thoughts for the future which can build perspectives. Thank you. So now the meeting is open for questions.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Anurag from Kids School of Mass Communication, first semester. So my question to the panel is that, how can we think of media addressing issues of marginalization when media at the end is a profiteering entity?
They're trying to give voices to the voiceless. Wonderful. All the newspapers were trying to give voices to India and India's freedom struggle. And because of that history, we have started expecting things from the media. But media usually see, you can expect little things from the so-called government media, the Doordarshan and the All India radios, maybe, but they also don't have any accountability. As a business proposition, the business organization, they don't have any, any accountability. And why you are thinking about the responsibility? That's my take. Maybe there is, some other panelists they throw some other light, but I agree with you. I'm not even asking the question because I've realized that they are not going to do anything, at least for the marginalized, because they are not. See, who will they talk? Listen to those who give them advertisements. That's their bread and butter. You pay 2 to 15 rupees for a newspaper, and it costs them 25 to 35, 40 rupees. How do they make up for that cost? And how do they make profit? Because of advertisements. So obviously they listen to the advertisements. They're not going to listen to the marginalized. And the marginalized are not in the market force. They're not part of the market force. They're not buyers. Get my point? So they're not going to do anything about it. Only thing they'll do is that they'll pay lip service.
Next question, please.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, entire panel. This is Shatabdi from Kate School of Mass Communication, first year. So my question to the panel is, what could be the crucial role of media in achieving gender equality?
I'm against this use of role. So that means we are attributing something, as my co-panelist said, something to somebody who cannot do it or do it well, or who cannot deliver it. So belonging to, again I am invoking the logic of orality. In oral cultures, we are always compelled to be led by somebody. A person, an institution, or somebody has to lead us. So we are always led. We need somebody to lead us. When we ascribe roles to these somebodies, whether they are individuals or institutions, then it becomes a problematic relationship between the subjects who are expecting something and others who cannot do or who cannot deliver something. So that's why you have celebrities becoming leaders in many parts of India. Okay, so of course in all the cultures in the world, we need celebrities so that we survive as fans or subjects. That's something different. What to expect from an institution that continues to be feudal casteist? How such an institution? I'm not generalizing. You can look at the statistics concerning the places, important positions given to minorities, gender minorities, and otherwise in Indian media. And how can such an institution bring about something positive? So we should be part of the change. We cannot expect others to be contributing to change. We must change. When you mass comm students, when you become media entrepreneurs, you try to put in place these changes which you are not seeing now. So we are seeing so many women anchors, so many holding microphones, cameras, and what is the real position inside this media? These have to be studied. And who dominates in a panel discussion? If there are few males and a few females, and what happens in the gender discourse that is outside the theme of the debate or something? Okay, so I think long ago when we were entering, we were told that Hindustan Times was owned by, I'm forgetting the name of the lady. She was the only newspaper owner. Yeah. So how many women owners are there in Indian media? In a patriarchal society, that is becoming more patriarchal, rigid by the day. So where are these media owners? Okay, so even if you have media owners, okay, women media owners, can they really deliver something to women? Okay, that's a big question. It has not happened elsewhere in the world also. It is not likely to happen in India also, unless we become part of the change. So we have not made any bold statements against media's gender roles. So we have to make a very strong statements as readers, as users. We need to boycott media which are anti-women or anti-gender or anti-minorities. That is not a strong or radical statement. And if you read history, people have always opposed injustice. Unless you oppose injustice, change is not possible.
See, talking about gender studies and media, I think we have to understand media in relation to the communication as a whole. We are, keeping media at a higher ladder and just degrading the whole process of communication. As far as gender sensitization is concerned, right now one of my scholars is doing this research on gender studies, and he has done analysis on gender studies, and very few issues they are there in media. That's why I'm stressing that lacks diversity, lacks plurality, and he's analyzing the local pullouts of the newspapers and gender, the women issues. They make a headline or they are highlighted only when the women is victim. So that kind of that's the viewpoint. So why we are expecting so much from media? So you are the young citizens, and you can interpret media messages from your own real world experiences also. That's my take.
I have a small take, sir. I have a small take. I'll take a minute. We all know about the Hindi serials, the so-called women-centric serials. I have a small take on that. It's all about designer women in not-so-designer dresses to start with, living in not-so-designer houses, but dreaming of designer life partners and a designer lifestyle, and having designer schemes plotted against them by other designer and not-so-designer women. This is the reality that they are portraying on television for all of us to consume. And we expect them to do something good. Talk about gender equality. But there is another side to it. Are we at our family level, the basic unit, the family, are we not gender biased? So maybe it starts from there. The third thing I want to talk about is that there are two takes on how the media works. They say that media reflects what happens in the society. Like I just said, that we are biased, so the media is also biased when it comes to the gender and other things. But then there's also another take that media may take the lead. But has it ever taken the lead? Has the media organizations, have they ever taken the? There have been wonderful movements, in fact, by media. We have to give it to them when it comes to the universal franchise, about the voting and coming to vote and all, and then about water and all. I know a few newspapers up north; they've been doing wonderful job. But when it comes to this kind of Beti Bachao is again another thing. My friends from Haryana, Bindu and Rasudos and Tisu, that many newspapers have taken up that Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, that campaign. That is okay, fine, but they're doing it very minuscule manner. They cannot bring about a complete societal change. That's my take. We have to do it ourselves. It's our problem. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. This is Anya from Birla School of Communication. So, sir, my question is to
Just a minute.
Yeah.
See, as Professor Gopalan told, that this panel is incomplete. So before you ask any further questions, we'll take questions,
Yeah.
provided our boss allows us. But with your permission, I would like Sir to give his comments, because without that it will be incomplete. Sir, please. After that we will take the questions. 2-3 questions, quick, very quick, and quick answers from one of.
Since Biplab has given me the chance to move beyond one-liners, that privilege you have given me. One is extensive and detailed media critique definitely is acceptable. But the media pervasive nature in our society and the pedagogy of teaching journalism and mass communication in the Indian setup should not make the exercise a journey of disillusionment with the Indian media system to the youngsters. Philosophical and critical treatises are acceptable at higher levels of intervention. But when you're looking for opportunities and jobs, I have done an analysis. There are about at least 67,000 to 70,000 registered jobs available based on various kinds of analysis I have done. Now my suggestion to the JMC fraternity, because we are all teachers here, is the critical tracking should be justifiably separate and very important. But inclusiveness is a tangible benefit that we are seeing over a period of time. The expansion of middle class in India did not occur, or it would not have occurred, had the incorporation of various sections not taken place politically or even despite the media's attention to it. So that is something that we need to recognize and take the students through the opportunities that the marginalized have in India's digital ecosystem. As many of you have said, as Ravindran also said, forget the media, long live the oppressed. Forget the mainstream media, let others bloom. We have had wonderful YouTube interventions by self-expression morality groups talking about that culture. I think the journey to the youngsters, they are 21, 22, 18, 19. You start a class between 800 channels, all of them are owned by 3 big people, the Adanis, the Ambanis. They are dropped everywhere in the media, so I have the liberty to use them. It becomes a problem. Critical thinking is important, but cynicism towards the environment causes the youth to lose the trajectory and future. That we don't have a business to do it, is all my appeal to the, I'm not against the thought process. Thought processes are important, and Ravindran knows we have taken the journey in all our classes about criticality. But the separation, and I'm not talking about vocational, I'm not talking about only professionalism. I think this is something, for example, you talked about gender equity. But have we done enough institutional analysis of why the anchors and how they have grown? And what are the odds that they face of the first women journalists, etc.? We need to tell them those role models of defying odds and making it to the profession, so that her question of gender equity, gender equality, not necessarily the role, but the opportunities are created. This is my take after 4 decades of teaching. I am an optimist, but also an incurable cynicist as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We have 1 second, so I will not allow anyone else. We'll take 3 sentences, only 1 sentence, 1 question, and 1 answer, 1 sentence from this panel. Only one person will ask. Yes, please.
Good morning, sir. This is Anya from Birla School of
tell your
Communication.
name. Only
Okay,
the-
sir. Okay, sir. Question is to Mihir, sir. He said social media makes us less empathetic. Sir, can you answer my question? How?
I've already given the answer. We are consumed by it. What we do is that we only like and share, and that's all.
Sir, but we are young generation. We usually.
You will be continuing it over lunch and tea. Ma'am, your question.
Hello. When the esteemed Dias said that media is nothing more than a profit generating machine and we should not expect anything from this entity, are we really nullifying the social responsibility theory, Aristotle model of communication, and agenda setting theory on this platform?
Madam, I appreciate your concern. These belong to the past, unfortunately. Agenda setting, social responsibility, if we are living in reality, they belong to the past.
Last one said one liner. Oh, sir. Sir, you want to give comments. From sir, we will take comment.
What Ravindran said was very right. But my question is that when you're talking about the London model and then you talk about North American model, in India, right from Pandit to Indira Gandhi, there was a Russian model. And from JNU even today, it dominates the Russian model, Chinese model. In spite of these modalities of left and right, in India we find there is a chaos. Chaos due to the ideological illusions. What is very basic is, we are not touching the grassroots problems. We are not inclusive at all. So if you want to be inclusive, then what you said is Jainese philosophy very important. Mahavira focused on three things: Samyak Gyan, Samyak Charit, and Samyak Darshan. So right knowledge, right conduct, and right behavior. Righteousness and balance, optimum balance is very needed in media deliberations. We are lacking totally this. And Buddha and Jaina, all them had developed Yapaniya Sanghas. Dr. Ambedkar says that Sangha tradition. Yesterday somebody made a remark about argument of Amartya Sen. More important is the Sangha tradition and democratic participation of Jainas and Buddhas. We have to carry through the media process. His prophetism is wrong. Then what he argued about James Howard Hickey is also totally wrong. He said Hickey's second title was, Calcutta General Advertiser. Two things are different dimensions. One, he in the last issue writes, I would like to enslave my body for the sake of freedom of expression. Further, Professor Justice Reddy wrote an article about press today, tomorrow and yesterday about 100 years of Indian press. He says, unfortunately, we are carrying the legacy of Hickey hitting below the belt. Hickey has some point made a sacrifice. Other way, Hickey also created a yellow journalism in other way. So that we are following. So profitability is not a character of Indian media. Never at all. The three ages: Anglo-Indian age, or the language newspaper age of Rajaram Mohan Roy, and even the freedom age and the modern Indian age. India was never at all a profitable media. What is important is educating people, emancipating people, and completely giving justice to human. Thank you very much.
So,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So we'll not be taking any question. Sir's comment was great. Now, within 1 minute, you will complete.
Thank you, Biplab sir. Now, this panel discussion, this plenary session 3 is going to get wrapped up by just 2 liners. I would like to conclude that our esteemed speakers on the dais have talked in depth about this media and marginalization, and the cream sentences which I have gone through by Professor Ravindran is what is not media, what is not communication. It is all about stress, and you please study your natives. Before you study McLuhan, you go back to Walter Vaughan. Second, Professor Bindu Sharma has stated in one line, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. So we have to self-establish ourselves, we have to make ourselves competent, then only we can gel with others and we can bring a change. And it similarly goes with Professor Mihir Ranjan Patra, who has also stated that the change comes from within. we don't expect that media will change us. To some extent, media is influencing us and we are getting pawned by it. But it is high time that we start changing ourselves so that we can get over this marginalization, this gender bias, the culture of keeping people oppressed. So that was a wonderful session, and we all suppose that we have really enriched ourselves with these kind of discussions. And let the discussions not be discussions. Let us implement it. Let us make our society a much better place. And of course, my deepest regards goes to Professor B.P. Sanjay and our ex-Vice Chancellor of Tripura, sir, sitting right in front of me. A realistic explanation. We should stress on the ancient Indian theories and our own country, a country of 70,000 monks. Then we would get to know the literature and we can move forward with it. Thank you so much, audience. Thank you so much, panelists, for being here. Before I complete, I would just request the participants for the next post-lunch technical session. The paper reading sessions will be held on Conference Hall 1, 2, 5, 6, and 8. At 2:30 p.m., that is post-lunch, and all participants are requested to send their PowerPoints to nmconclave@gmail.com by 12:30 p.m. And any more questions or queries if you have, please reach out to the registration desk. You will be taken care of. Thank you so much and have a good day ahead.
Thank you for giving me the chance to be the session chair, and I have learned from Professor Dharulkar and Professor Sanjay here, and from my
just
panel.
a minute, audience. Please don't leave. Please don't leave for the next session. We have our felicitation. The felicitation process will begin soon. We will be felicitating our esteemed speakers. Right now, we felicitate Dr. Gopalan Ravindran, Professor and Head, Department of Media and Communication, Central University of Tamil Nadu, CUTN. Thank you, Ravindran sir, for your lovely speech. Professor Dr. Bindu Sharma, we are felicitating Professor Dr. Bindu Sharma, Director, Institute of Mass Communication and Media Technology. Felicitation is done by our chairperson, Dr. Upendra Padi. Thank you, ma'am, for Vasudeva Kutumbakam. We now would be felicitating Dr. Mihir Ranjan Patra, Associate Professor, Department of CNT, Guru Jambeshwar University of Science and Technology, Hisar. He is being felicitated by Dr. Upendra Padi. Thank you, Patra sir, for your kind speech and making us remember that we should change individually.